Hi guys and welcome back. Today we're going to come back inside and I'm going to talk about the other aspect of this channel, which will be mental health. More namely, what happens when you ask for help. Now, I see a lot of people on Facebook putting statuses saying, oh, if you ever need someone to talk, just drop me a message and here's a number for Samaritans and all that stuff. Which I get the well intention, but quite often there's almost a stigma attached where you want to keep those sort of issues to yourself and to potentially another confidant who you don't actually know. That's what the way is for me. I actually admitted more to a GP and a therapist than I actually have ever admitted to any of my friends and even my partner. The hardest step that really was the first one, which is admitting there's a problem, that you need help. I was probably actually had depression for about 12, 13 years. It really started when I was at university. There wasn't quite the same support network and social network there as there is in most universities these days. I was part of a large group. I played varsity volleyball. My course was over 100 people, but I never got attached to anyone. I don't know what it was. I just couldn't find myself to fully delve into that social group and that network. And so because of that, I always felt like an outsider. And because of being an outsider, I always doing my own thing, but I wasn't really. It's a very weird situation I found myself in. I was isolated quite a lot. I went to university in Sheffield and I'm from Coventry. So it was only an hour and a half away, but I couldn't have friends. I didn't really have friends up every weekend as some other people do. I travelled back home on quite a lot on occasion. But that was more for me. It made me happy going back and seeing my friends. But I stayed in Sheffield almost out of sheer spite for a lot longer than I should have. And because of that, and my mental health was so poor, I actually dropped out of uni. I didn't actually complete it. So I'm now saddled with £18,000 worth of student loan debt and no degree to show for it, which is quite possibly one of my biggest regrets. I first started to realise really when I needed help was around February this year. In January, I lost my paternal grandfather, and only 6 months previously I lost my maternal grandfather. Both absolute, true, genuine gentlemen. Both of them rocked me so hard. You can't really put into words. They're the guys who bring you up as well. It was a big shock for me. It took a long time for me to get over, for the first, and then to happen again 6 months later. It's just terrible. But at my paternal grandfather's funeral in February, I was watching a lot of the photos from family days out and things like that, and I wasn't in any of them. The reason being, I was actually playing golf. And I can't get those days back with my granddad now. But the reason I was playing golf, because that was my out for my mental health. I needed that as my calm time. I needed to separate myself from everyone, the stresses of family life, having kids, that sort of stuff. I needed that time to unwind. But then I realised it's really came at a detriment because I wasn't really dealing with any of my initial issues. So while I was struggling, I phoned up the IAP service, which is the Improved Access to Psychological Therapies. It's provided from the NHS and it is self-referral. So you can just call up on your own. You do not need any GP recommendation or referral to go through the system. If you think you need help, this is a confidential NHS-backed number that you can use to help you get the help you need. When I first phoned, I didn't know what to say. It was one of those where I knew they needed help, but I hadn't said it out loud before. But the person on the other end of the line was fantastic. They took their time, they didn't want to rush me. All it was to say, I need help. They accept it and they book a future appointment. So that first call, you're not going to get a massive list or telling you to write down all your problems and all that sort of stuff. No. All they do is take your name. I think they took my GP in my area, that sort of stuff. But then they took that information and you get an appointment for later that week. And that is really what you need, to give you a couple of days to process, to say, I have taken the first step to improving my own mental health. In a day or so, I received an email, just obviously a confirmation of your appointment and the details. But they also send you a couple of things to have a look at first. One of the main things that I was kept on being referred to was this. It's just a little questionnaire based on your own personal well-being and how you are during the last time. So, for example, it's asking, over the last 2 weeks, how often have you been feeling bothered by any of the following problems? So then it gives a list of things, and you just have to say, not at all, several days, more than half the days, nearly every day, that sort of scale. Same thing about over the last 2 weeks, how often have you been bothered by any of these problems? And again, not at all, several days, more than half the days, nearly every day. But not at all being 0, nearly every day being 3. You then get given a score. So the first score is out of 27, second score out of 21. And don't be worried if when you do this, your numbers are quite low. The higher up you are on the scale indicates you might need a little bit more help, and what type of help you need. This is a gauge purely for the therapist on the other end of the phone to see what sort of situation you see yourself in. They can always, using their professional input, understand what you could potentially be feeling if you're maybe hiding something that you're not fully open. That can happen still as well, even after you've helped. You've still got to be that level of trust between yourself and the therapist. One thing they ask quite early on as well, and they do ask repeatedly each time you go through a session, they ask, do you have any suicidal thoughts or anything causing harm to yourself or others? Now, personally, I've never had that issue, but I know it is something. But just because you answer no to a question doesn't make it like your issues aren't as important. Yes, there are other people out there with it worse off than you, but what you've got to do is look out for yourself first. Make sure you're in the right headspace. Make sure you're in control of your life and your destiny as well. If you start taking a backseat to this sort of stuff, lots of other things can take control, and before you know, your life can slip away before you realise it. That's not what we want. We want to take control and find a way to get through these times together. The first telephone appointment lasted approximately 50 minutes with, I think for me, it was about 35 minutes of just them asking me questions and me giving my responses. Never belittle any of your feelings that you have. Like I said, they're asking you, have you ever felt suicidal or harm to yourself or others? If you haven't, like I say, don't worry about it. They're not expecting you to say, they're not going to put you further down a list because you're not at that level. No, every single time they are there for you. As long as they're there for you, they're helping you on your journey. Remember, this is a journey. It's not an answer. We've got to get through it and we'll keep moving forward. After this initial appointment, where you are probably on the phone potentially close to an hour, there will be subsequent phone calls every 4 to 6 weeks, depending on what works for you as well. With these ones, these are like just checking how any progressions you've made, any more recommendations, because I was recommended for CBT, which is cognitive behavioural therapy. So because of the lockdown, I had mine over the phone, but there are opportunities to go to actual physical appointments as well. And that helped me progress with things quite a bit. But that's my personal journey. Alongside the CBT, I also visited my GP to let them know what I was doing at the same time. Told them I was seeing the IAP service, and while I was there, I asked for antidepressants. Now this may seem bizarre, but I knew I needed a little bit of help getting through each day as well. So I was prescribed sertraline, which is your bog standard one that they prescribe. 50 milligrams to start off with, but you do not see any results within your first month. So don't get your hopes up that these are going to be magic pills that make everything better. They don't. You still need time to work with your own issues. Okay. After my initial month, my dosage was increased, and I've now been on 100 milligrams for 4 months, I believe it is now. But it has seen me do the world of good. At first, it knocks my sleeping pattern about a little bit, but once you find a pattern that works for you, like what time you take your tablets and things like that, it really is quite simple. I used to think paying $7.50 for the last time I had a prescription was extortionate, like a dose of antibiotics if required. This price is scandalous. But now I'm seeing it as, although it's gone up to £9 something now, I see it as £9 for a month for my own health and for my own sanity almost on some days. And you cannot put a price on that at all. If you have any questions about what I've said today, or you just want to reach out, drop the email. It's up in the about section of this channel. And make sure to do the usual, like, comment and subscribe. If this has helped you, or if not, just give you a bit more information, potentially help a friend, because it's never just a one person journey. We get there together, and I'll be here with you as well. So this is LJ signing off again. I'll see you on the first tee.